if we can get a deal on making sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and that deal is possible. We know the terms of what that would look like. I was asked very early in my presidential race back in 2007, would I meet with these various rogue regimes? And what I said then remains true. If I thought it advances American interests, yes. I believe in diplomacy, I believe in dialogue, I believe in engagement.
All right, folks. Joining us now is John Yoo, professor of law at Berkeley Law, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United States at DOJ, and of course the author of Point of Attack, Preventive War, International Law and Global Welfare. Hello, John. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you, Steve.
And I should add, a co-author of a great piece at nationalreview.com with John Bolton, our friend, advice on advice and consent, which really, lays it all down regarding Obama's foreign policy. And as you state in the opening of the piece, Obama has to be held accountable here, not only for overstepping his bounds on domestic policy, whether it's immigration or Obamacare, but also when it comes to dealing with foreign nations, correct?
Yes, we have placed a lot of attention on President Obama's abuse of executive power at home. But I think sometimes we overlook what's going on abroad, especially because of presidents. Most people give presidents a lot more leeway in foreign affairs. But there's some important constitutional principles that have to be observed. And the one that Obama, I think, is really trying to get around these days is the treaty clause, which requires 2/3 of the Senate to approve all important international agreements. The clip you just played shows that he's trying to make an agreement with Iran, and he's already got people in his administration out there saying that they're going to try to do it without any congressional consent.
And can they do that, though, without congressional consent?
Well, John and I don't think so, depending on what the agreement says. I mean, if we had, and I think this is, Obama's fantasy land here, if we reached some kind of agreement where Iran agreed to give up its nuclear weapons and the United States didn't do anything, well, then there's no real agreement that the Senate has to approve. But, the Iranians, I think, are unfortunately playing us, and Obama is just desperate for an agreement, and he could sign all kinds of provisions. For example, he might agree on a non-aggression clause where we would agree not to attack Iran as long as it gives up its nuclear weapons. If we agree to something like that, it's got to be a treaty that's approved by 2/3 of the Senate. But President Obama finds this inconvenient because he doesn't want to put, in his last 2 years of his term, he's not up for re-election, he doesn't want to put any of his policies abroad, which are failing left and right, up to a vote in the Congress because he's afraid and I think he would lose on Iran. So he's just going to ignore the Constitution entirely.
And what he's done with domestic policy is say, I'm going to do this. If you don't like it, stop me. So if he does it and signs these treaties without Congress or the Senate and says, stop me, will they, can they?
Well, I think there are two things Congress can do. This is, I hope the contribution of our piece, John and I, National Review, is to start building a positive case for what Congress can do other than complain. The first and best thing they can do is to impose mandatory sanctions on Iran, tougher than the ones we've got now, that the president has no ability to lift. If the United States is going to promise in some treaty to lift the sanctions on Iran, then Congress will have to do it. And then the second thing we want to say is that the Senate and the Congress can make clear that these policies are only good as long as Obama comes into office, and that the next president should feel free to terminate any kind of deal with Iran because the Senate never agreed. And so it only represents President Obama's view and not the view of the other branches of the government.
All right, let me ask you about some specifics now. North Korea, for instance, we've imposed more sanctions. Is he really strong enough with North Korea, do you believe? And are the sanctions that he's imposed, are they going to do anything? Are they really going to work?
Well, first I have to say, as a Korean, I might be biased about this, but I think that the North Korean regime is the most evil, murderous regime we see on the face of the planet right now. And I think that the United States is not going nearly far enough to try to bring this regime to an end. Increasing sanctions may have some marginal effect, but the United States has been increasing and decreasing sanctions up and off, down, off and on for a few decades now. and they haven't shown any sign of stopping North Korea's move towards a nuclear weapons program. It's irrational lashing out at the rest of the world through sinking South Korean naval vessels, launching the Sony hack attack, and so on. I don't think this is going to go nearly far enough. They think sanctions have got to be ratcheted up to try to exclude North Korea entirely from international trade.
Right. And China, are we using any leverage we have with China? Are they helping us at all?
No, clearly not. I mean, clearly Obama, if you look at what's going on in other areas of our policy towards China, the Obama administration is trying to appease China in places where it's pushing outward, like the South China Seas, against Japan, against the Philippines, against our allies, our traditional allies in the region. The United States has done very little. And I think if President Obama is not willing to take on China on things like that, they're certainly not pressing China very hard to solve North Korea. It should be. It's in China's interest to also end this terrible regime in North Korea. And I think the United States, President Obama has to show some leadership here to try to move beyond just the simple sanctions we've had so far.
We got oil prices plunging again, record low today, is hurting countries like Russia and Iran. Is Obama handling Putin, for instance, properly? And might the tumbling of his economy as it continues to go south, put us back against the wall, and might we see something we don't even expect from Putin?
I'm sure this must drive President Obama crazy, but American foreign policy and our national interests are being protected by the red state oil drillers and Saudi Arabia. President Obama has almost nothing to do with all the setbacks that our rivals and competitors in the world, like Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, are suffering. Right? They're getting clobbered by these low oil prices. I think oil now is at $50 a barrel, which is more than a 50% drop from earlier in the year. This is ruining the Russian economy, the Iranian economy, the Venezuelan economy. This is a godsend for American foreign policy. President Obama has nothing to do with this. If you read what his secretaries of energies want to do, they want to increase the price of gas, right? They don't want to make gas cheaper in the United States. So it's been the Saudis and the red state drillers, oil drillers, who have actually been doing more for American national interests than the State Department and the White House and President Obama.
John, always great to talk to you. And again, folks, go to nationalreview.com and check out Advice on Advice and Consent by John Bolton and John Yoo. And we'll speak to you soon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Coming up next, we'll talk about all of this and more with the Malzberg panel. It's next on Newsmax Television.